Hey folks, this is Vince with Dad's Gaming Addiction, and today we're going to talk Medieval Dynasty. So I've been streaming this game for the last month or two, about 1 or 2 hours each night on my Twitch channel, and I've played the game enough to have gotten very far, and I wanted to part some of my knowledge. I've come up with some cool ways to make some money and to survive, so I thought I'd pass my knowledge on to you folk. Now, it's worth mentioning, Medieval Dynasty as of right now is still early access, so everything that you're about to see is subject to change. Alright, let's jump into the top 20 tips on how to be successful in Medieval Dynasty. Okay, so the very first thing I want to address is the ability to customize your game. And what's cool is that you can even customize your settings mid-game. So if you're setting up your game and you're like, yeah, this is really cool, new game, let's go. And then you find out, oh, this is way too grindy, I need to turn up the XP gain. Well, you don't have to start over. You can jump right in to this settings menu and adjust things on the fly mid-game, and they will take effect immediately. So that's really cool. So again, if you find something too grindy, you can increase some sliders, or if you want to make the taxes a bit more lax, you can do that. Be warned, however, that if you increase the buildings limit, that might actually mess up the game. Again, this is an early access game, so I try not to mess with that too much. But I do increase it just a little bit, and I haven't had any sort of problem. If you find that enemies are hitting too hard, or if you want to turn off bandits, you can totally do that as well. So definitely make use of this. Fine-tune the settings how you want. That way you can get the most out of your gameplay experience. Alright, tip number 2, you're going to want to use spears and axes to help yourself get food. And again, if you've settled on a place next to water, then you don't have to boil it or anything like that. You just drink it right from the source. But typically, you're going to have an axe and a spear. And again, you can go to your quick menu here, handcrafting. By finding sticks and stones on the ground, you can craft sticks. You can craft these stone axes. Also, the wooden spears. The wooden spears are better for throwing as opposed to melee. You do more damage using your axe at melee than you do your wooden spear. So what you're going to want to do is possibly find a rabbit. Now, you won't have Spidey's sense in the beginning of the game. Okay, tree, excuse you. So you're not going to have access to this nice little feature here. But with your axe, you're going to... And what's nice is you can do this anywhere, in an emergency, whatnot. Just chop down a tree. Like if there's a hog or a boar or something, and he's bearing down on you, you can sort of run away, chop down a tree, get 4 or 5 spears, and just start chucking these spears at them, and that should do the trick. I'll go ahead and just craft a wooden spear real quick. And yeah, we'll just equip it, hit I. I've got an iron crossbow, which again is endgame stuff, but the wooden spear is right there. Go ahead and assign that to slot number 2. And again, you won't have Spidey's sense in the beginning. So you're going to have to sort of play things by ear and by sight. Just sort of be patient. The rabbit is there somewhere. All right, not an ideal spot for hunting because everything's blended, but all right, I got it. That will come... That just takes practice, I'm just saying. Make sure that you've crafted a skinning knife, so that you can collect the fur and the like. No, I don't think I do. Yeah, the skinning knife, you can get meat and fur from rabbits. You'll get leather from deer and the like. If you don't have the skills with the spear, you can outrun rabbits. Yeah, it's so weird. I don't know if there's any more rabbits nearby, but you can actually outrun the rabbit. So I'm just going to quickly... That was a bird. That was a new feature they added in with a recent patch. But yeah, you can actually outrun the rabbit. Just, I don't know if I'm going to find one now. You watch. That's not a rabbit down there. Okay. I guess we'll just head back in this general direction. Okay, so there's a rabbit right there. Let's just run toward it with our axe. And typically, if it runs in the same direction, if we time it right, which we just did... We just got it. So all you have to do is just run straight, swing down at the ground, time it right, and you've got it with your axe. So that's another way of easily catching early food in the game. Now, if you don't want to go the butchery route, you will find berries in the environment. During the spring, you're going to have unripe berries. Don't eat those. I'll explain what they're good for later. But during the summer season, you'll have regular berries, I believe. And with those regular berries, you'll be able to eat those for a nice source. But again, I think you're going to want to do a lot of hunting in this game. Not only do you get meat from killing these animals, but you're also going to get fur and leather, which will be useful later on, and I'll explain that shortly. Tip number 3, scouting around before you start throwing down buildings. So it's a good idea when you first start out to look around and see where you're going to want to set up shop. Now, I personally look for a couple of things. 1, how central is it? 2, is it next to water? And 3, how close is it to the nearest town? Now, reason why I say, is it close to water? Yes, you can build a well in this game, but it's not going to be for a while. It's just easier if I get thirsty to drink real quick, and then I can go back to doing whatever it was I was doing without having to run out to no man's land back to my base, you know what I mean? So, is it next to water? In this case, yes it is. Is it central? Yes it is. This is a nice piece of flat land here. And the reason why I like a central location is because not all towns will sell the same thing. If I'm looking for animals, I might have to look over here. Or if I'm looking for a particular item, I might have to go down here. If I set up shop over here, Lesnica, or near it, and I need to run all the way over here to Boraro, it's going to be a far trek on foot. So at least with me being in a central location, that will limit how far I need to run for anything in the game. Also, is it close to a town? Now, in my very first playthrough, I actually set up shop right here. It was nice. The land was not really flat, though, and it wasn't a great location. But the nice thing about it was I could sell things very quickly. I could run across the bridge, run into town, and just sell whatever, and I can go back to doing whatever it was I was doing. Eventually, though, after a couple of playthroughs, I settled on this location. It's a bit more of a run to Gustovia to sell your things, but the land out here is much more flat, and there's more expansion to grow. So, tip number 3, first scout around, see if you can find a nice piece of flat land, and consider water, how central is it, and how close is it to other towns. Tip number 4, don't build too much too quickly. It's just a bad idea for a number of reasons. First, if you go to your management tab, you'll see something called taxes. The more buildings you have, the more taxes you have, and it does add up over time. We can even further see that by clicking on the little house to the left here. And you can drill down into these various, like here's all my houses and extraction buildings. There's a tax column. Each building that you construct has a tax associated with them. So if you're not making a whole lot of money right away, then you're going to start to accrue all this tax, and it's not going to pay off unless you quickly turn those buildings around into something profitable. On top of that, you have a building limit, and that's usually determined by your dynasty reputation. The higher your dynasty reputation, typically the more population and buildings that you're allowed to construct. So tip number 4, don't build too much too quickly. Have a plan and put the buildings down that you need in order to start making money, and then go from there. Tip number 5, making some early money. So you're going to be broke. I'm just saying, you're going to be broke. At some point, however, you'll make a ton of money if you just stick with it for a while. Now, how do you make early money so that you can actually start to afford other things? Well, let's go ahead and take a look at the workshop, which is one of the most basic things that you're going to get. Now, keep in mind, this workshop here, I believe, is upgraded to its highest level, which is level 3. So it's not going to have all of this. It's not going to look like this. However, what you can do in the very beginning of the game, and you can free to experiment, but what I recommend is the small wicker basket. All you need are sticks. If you just go around the environment, collecting sticks, bringing them here, craft some wicker baskets. You can make a bunch of these, bring them to town, and it's a decent amount of money. That'll buy you food if you really don't like to hunt. But primarily, this is the way I made money when I first started the game. And you can actually see the price on the bottom there. Keep in mind, it may not be 15 exactly because of skills or whatnot that might affect sell price. You know, there's there's different things, different factors that come into play with regards to the price that you see on the bottom of the screen there. The nice thing about wicker baskets is that these are non-perishable. So if you don't want to constantly run to town, you can just keep crafting over the course of several days. And then when you've got enough for a full load, you can run them all into town. And again, it's not food, so it won't spoil. So early game, I highly recommend the wicker basket unlock. Just spend the coin that you need to unlock this particular recipe, find sticks in the environment, and just craft a bunch. It's super easy to do, and you'll make, it's not a whole lot of money, but it's a fairly decent way to do so. Tip number 6, and this is another way to make money once you start getting comfortable hunting. Now, you hunt because you need food. That's fine. But the benefit to hunting is that you get fur and leather. Both fur and leather can be used to make money. I mean, it's a no-brainer. If you're going to hunt, you might as well use that extra material that you're getting in order to do various things. What I would recommend doing, a lot of the clothes that you see, and this is the sewing hut. So you're going to want to build the sewing hut early on, maybe right after the workshop. If you have access to the sewing hut, build the sewing hut. And from here, you'll be able to build or craft fur shoes. Fur shoes require fur and leather. Unfortunately, there's not a whole lot of other things that I saw that just only requires those two things. Oftentimes, these shirts will require linen, which you don't have flax yet, and linen is super expensive. Hoods, another example, you need wool fabric for hoods, linen thread for this fur capelet, bags and backpacks even, leather. The small pouch isn't too bad, but I never really unlocked it or needed it. But what you're going to want to do, I think, fur shoes. That is a great way to go. Each one sells for about 170 minus the fluctuation there with the market and skills and all of that jazz. But it's super easy. You're getting fur from rabbit, typically. Also from Wasent, if you're that brave enough to hunt those right now. And also from boar and deer, you're getting leather. So you might as well use those things to your advantage and make some easy money. So for early to mid game, I would highly recommend the sewing hut and crafting a bunch of fur shoes in addition to those small wicker baskets. All right, let's talk berries for a second. That leads to tip number 7, berries. Now, yes, you could totally just pick berries and eat them, but they're useful for other things. At some point, you're going to want to do some farming. And you're going to want a lot of fields because you need flax, you need carrots, you need cabbage, you need oat, you need rye, and all that stuff. I mean, all of it. You're going to need a lot of fertilizer. Well, how are you going to get fertilizer? Well, you can buy fertilizer, very expensive. Manure, you can buy manure. You're not going to have animals right away. You can buy manure and turn it into fertilizer, assuming you've got a barn to do so. Or you can start saving up berries and letting them rot. If you let them rot, just let them sit in a container somewhere. You can go to the barn workbench, and with the cost of 10 rot, you can make 1 fertilizer. I would highly recommend you do this right away. That way you've got a lot of fertilizer saved up for your first starting crops. It's much cheaper to make your own fertilizer than it is to buy it. So start saving your berries now. If you have to, pick a lot of unripe berries during, I think it was the spring season. And then during summer when the berries are actually ready to be eaten, you can use those for consumption. But just go around, pick a bunch of those unripe berries. Eating them isn't very healthy anyway, so you might as well use them for something. Get like 400, 500, 600 berries, let them rot. And you'll be able to craft a bunch of fertilizer and start saving that up, and that'll eventually get you kickstarted into farming. All right, tip number 8. Let's talk quests real quick. You can do these as you see fit. Highly recommend, though, that you talk to them first and see what they need before you agree to it. For example, sometimes they'll ask for pants, and you don't even have linen yet. So yeah, this person wants some pants. Well, I don't have the material. I do. But as a new player, you won't have the materials really to make pants. Linen isn't something that you rush out and get right away. At least I didn't. So just talk to them first. If you do accept the quest, make sure that you accept the quest closer to the beginning of the season, which is the span of 3 days, because a lot of these side quests will expire that season. So it's very possible that you wait till the 3rd day of a season, pick up a quest, then you've got 2 hours to complete it because, oh, the season's about to end. I'm going to fail my quest if I don't do this right away. But doing these quests are good because on occasion, not only do they give you Dynasty reputation, but sometimes they'll even contribute to your skills, your technology. So sometimes they will give you production or survival technology points that will help you unlock some of these other schemes and recipes. Tip number 9. When you do start out farming, start out small. Do a couple of plots for each crop type. Nothing too crazy because, again, having excess fields or a lot of fields will contribute to your tax, and you're going to need a lot of fertilizer to do that. So start off small, and I would recommend starting with cabbage, carrots, and beetroot. Why do I recommend these things? Well, if you are hunting, which you probably are, you're going to have a ton of meat. And you can use that meat in conjunction with those 3 vegetables to make things in the kitchen. There's something called a cauldron here. And these soups and stews are fairly easy to make. For example, this pottage here, 2 cabbage, just raw meat, and a wooden bowl. And wooden bowls are a very simple thing that can be crafted in the workshop. But with the pottage recipe, don't worry about the whole salted meat thing. I just think that's extra. That I never salt anything, and I'm fine. Stew uses carrots, and the soup uses beetroot. So those 3 vegetables, in addition to meat and wooden bowls, will give you some really cool mid-level sellable food. And I don't even give this to my villagers. I save it, and then I sell it in bulk. And I get a ton of money for doing so. So when you first start off farming, highly recommend carrots, cabbage, and beetroot. Tip number 10, while we're on the subject of food, let's talk about setting limits for your people. At some point, you're going to want to bring people in to do all the nasty work for you. So you can actually control what they eat. You do not want them eating your money-making food. It's very fine just to give them meat, cooked meat, and they will be happy for it. So what I like to do is take some time. If you go to the management tab and click on the 5th tab, is people's demand control. And there's a food items drop down here. Just click on that. And you'll see all the different food items in the game and how much you have of each and how much they're valued. That value will contribute over here to the right under, say, food and then demand per day, that kind of thing. So again, your money-making stuff, like your pottage, for example, and your soup, scrambled eggs with mushrooms, that's some more later on. Once you get eggs and mushrooms, you'll be able to do that. But the soups and the pottage you'll make with the cabbage and the carrots I was talking about. So you don't want your people eating that. And you can see it's higher on the priorities than, say, simple roasted fish meat or roasted meat. They're going to eat the stews and the soups first before they eat the roasted meat. So you're going to want to control what they're eating. Now, I let them eat stew because I'm loaded with money at this point, and I'm not that particular anymore. But when you're first starting out, every little thing you craft will count toward making money to getting whatever it is you're getting. Animals aren't cheap in this game. So highly recommend you come here to the people's demand control and control what they eat. Specifically, just keep it checked to roasted meat. You can make a bunch of roasted meat in your kitchen or even at a campfire. You just cook the roasted meat that way and start feeding your villagers that way. Any food that you make, you're going to want to put into the food storage house, the little storage area. And as you can see, I've got a ton of it, but you're not going to have this much. But if you put it here, the people will eat out of it, but they won't eat the stuff that you've deselected. So just keep that in mind. Highly recommend, controlling what your people eat. It'll save you some money. Animals are really cool in this game. They're going to give you a lot of cool stuff. However, you're going to need to be able to feed them. How do you feed them? Well, you're going to need to plant some crops. Surprise, surprise, surprise. So you can see the list of fields that you have here in the 3rd tab under management. And I've got 17 different fields, and I can even rename them if I so chose to. But they give you a quick overview of what it is they're growing. I can double click on the field itself, and then I can see its current status. Right now, I'm not doing a whole lot, but if I hit the second tab over, the villager's working schedule, I can choose which type I want to plant. And the things that you will need to feed your animals, you're going to need animal feed. Animal feed can be crafted here at the workbench, and that requires oat grain, rye grain, and straw. So you're going to want to, at some point, when you want to start getting animals, you're going to want to start planting oat and rye. Whenever you process the rye and the oat, it'll give you straw. So you don't really have to go around looking for straw if you really don't want to. If you're in a bind to find straw, you can usually find it along the coastal areas here. Like if you just go along the river, you'll find little things that you can pick for straw. I think they're reeds or whatever. That's the early way to get straw in this game. But at some point, you'll be able to just get straw passively by processing the oat and the rye in the barn. And again, if you just run over to the barn, there's a little threshing floor here, and you'll be able to, once you've harvested the raw oat and the rye, you just come here, you can make oat grain, and you can make your rye grain, and again, save some for the next harvest, but you can start combining the oat and the rye that you're getting, along with the straw that it gives you passively, to make that animal feed, and start saving up on that, because animals tend to eat a lot, surprise, surprise. Fertilizer, tip number 12. I think it's 12. Anyway, so fertilizer, I've mentioned before already. Fertilizer will help you keep your fields, well, nice and healthy. They won't grow stuff if they don't have fertilizer, so you're going to need a lot of it. Now, one of the early animals that you'll get are pigs. So you're going to have more fertilizer than you know what to do with. So at this point, you no longer need to collect berries and let the berries rot and convert that rot into fertilizer. Instead, once you've got your pigs and you've got the animal feed to keep up with demand, you'll have more manure than you know what to do with. Just take the manure out of your warehouse, bring it over to your barn, and you can convert that into fertilizer at 2 manure per fertilizer. Any excess that you have can be sold. And it's actually a good way to make money too. The price of each fertilizer, at least on my list here, is 5. It's a lot more expensive to buy fertilizer than it is to sell it, but when you've got so much fertilizer, and this is what I use for growing crops, is 148. I think I have like 200 to 500 fertilizer in my warehouse just selling, and I'm making a lot of money just from that. So at some point when you do get pigs, you can use the fertilizer to not only manage your crops, but you can sell the excess. Quick tip, just make sure you're buying a male and female of each animal type so that they have babies, like this little chick here. Tip number 13. At some point, you're going to want flax. Flax is necessary because you're going to need to craft a bow. A lot of the quests that you get from the villagers, oh, I lost my bow, help me with my bow. So what happens when you plant flax and you go to the barn and you use the threshing floor, you've got flax, now what do you do with it? You come over here to the sewing hut, you go to the spinning wheel, and here you'll turn your flax stalk that you got from the threshing floor into linen thread. Linen thread is great. It's the price is actually pretty good on it, but you're going to get a ton of flax. I'm talking a ton. So don't go a little bit of flax here and a little bit of, no, if you're going to plant flax, make sure your fields are nice and big so that you can get a ton of flax. It's 1 linen thread per every 10 flax stalk that you have. From here, you'll be able to either craft some fabric. Fabric is used to create some of the clothes, or you can just say go to your blacksmith. And there's a table here. Here you can craft wooden weapons. You'll need linen thread for various bows and the like. So I would say, make some fabric, but save the bulk of your linen thread for crafting weapons. That way you can either use them yourself or you can sell them. But yeah, tip number, again, 13, just make sure that if you do start to farm out flax, make sure you do it in bulk. You're going to need it. Tip number 14. It's a pretty common thing to overlook in this game. The ability to actually spread out your buildings across the land. When I first started, I was like, you know what, let's just keep everything in one nice central location. So I did that, and for a while, I actually ran to the mine to the north, mined stuff, and then just ran all the way back. And it was a very slow process to do that. Eventually, I'm like, well, why don't I just put a warehouse up here? Storages are shared, right? So in theory, I could just walk in there, drop stuff off, walk in there, drop off stuff, and then ride home or walk home in the early onset of the game. Now, what you're looking at here is the North Cave, and just to show you where it is, it's to the northeast of Branica here. No bears, as far as I can tell. If there are bears, they are not near the cave entrance. I have not run into a single bear yet harvesting out of this cave, which is great. So I just plopped down a warehouse right here. And this has been upgraded to a mine, which gives you access to iron. More on that later. But for right now, you can just walk in here, get copper and tin with a pickaxe, come out here, and just drop stuff off. So tip number 14, build a warehouse next to a cave. If you're going to do a lot of mining, it'll save you a lot of time. Tip number 15, at some point you'll see that you're unlocking all these cool new things. Well, how do you do that? Well, if you open up the technology tab, you'll see that there's 4 different tabs underneath it. There's building technology, survival technology, farming technology, and production technology. Every time you do something in this game, something particular, it will level these up. And even your villagers will contribute to this, but I do believe that you contribute more to it than your villagers do, but don't quote me on that. I'm still trying to figure that out. Anyway, so to increase the amount of things you have access to under your building technology, look on the right-hand side of the screen. It'll tell you, develop this technology by extracting activities and building structures. Discover new schemes and learn to construct more advanced houses and storages. For survival technology, develop this by hunting animals, setting traps, and fishing. The next one over is farming. Just farm and breed animals. You'll increase your skills there as well. Production technology, develop this technology by crafting items and cooking. So by doing all 4 of these things, you'll be able to unlock some cool new stuff. Okay, as far as setting traps, by the way, let's go ahead and dismount for a minute so I can show you my radial wheel. It's weird. It's under furniture and decorations of all places. If you click on that, and then on the left-hand side is traps, you are limited to how many traps you can have, and you can increase it slightly through skills. But primarily, just you're going to have rabbit traps in the beginning, as well as a bird trap and a rat trap. They're okay. They give you a steady supply of meat. Birds will give you feathers as well, and rabbits will give you fur. I highly recommend the rabbits, at least in the beginning. It's easy to just get meat that way and fur without having to chase them down with an axe. Tip number 16. So at some point, you're going to want to start bringing in warm bodies to do all the work for you, because it is a lot to keep track of. Oh, I need to craft some fur shoes. Oh, now I need to collect sticks. Now I have to hunt for food. Now I got to do this. Now I got to do that. So you're going to need a lot of houses. And unfortunately, at this point in time, the game does not have a way to automate buildings. There is a builder's hut that you can put down later on in the game. It's a service that will help you repair buildings, but it won't construct them. So to save yourself the hassle, you can save yourself a little bit of space by combining men and women into the same house. 2 women, as far as I know, can't move into the same house, but a man and women can. And that way you don't have to build as many houses. It's if you, for example, want an entire town of all men or all women, you're going to have to build a house for every single man or woman. Whereas if you get couples together, well, there you go. I mean, you don't need to build half the amount of houses that you would typically need. And if you hit your management, and the second tab over is buildings, you can actually see what buildings you have available for people to move in. Like it says 0 out of 3 here, 0 out of 3. So I can move more people in. Keep in mind, however, that by combining a man and a woman into a house, they will eventually reproduce. And the mother will become unavailable to work, which means whatever position they were working in before, well, it's now vacant. I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 mothers right now. 7 jobs that are now vacant because they're now caring for their babies. So you can see I've got a lot of people being born here, a lot of mothers taking care of their kids. So I have to go to town and replace these mothers with actual working bodies. And at some point, these kids will grow up. The mothers will go back to work at some point. But just be warned that if you do start combining men and women into the same house, well, the women will stop working for a short time to care for their kids. But yeah, tip number 16, save room initially by combining men and women into houses. Because, hey, houses can be a pain to build. You know, a lot of stone, a lot of sticks. You can customize the look of a house when you're building it. Like you'll notice here, I've got stone, I've got a stone house, and I've got straw houses here, this wood. So when you're building it with the hammer, which I don't have equipped right now, but when you do start building it, you'll be able to choose the wall type by hitting E, I think it is. And you can set it stone or wood. Just be warned that if you do build stone houses, which look a lot nicer in my opinion, you'll need a crap ton of stone. So make sure that you're mining that out in some way, shape, or form. Tip number 17, I touched on this briefly, iron. You'll be able to get iron ore out of caves by building a mine on top of it. It's pretty easy to do. You queue up the mine, you hover the shadow over the cave entrance, and bam, mine. You just build it, done. Now the cave will expand and you'll have access to iron. Until you do that, you're going to want to stick to bronze stuff. Yeah, copper's nice. In fact, it's not bad when you're first starting out to start with copper. Whenever you mine out tin in this game, you're not going to get as much tin. So more than likely, you're going to have more copper than tin. I would recommend converting as much tin and copper into bronze as possible. And then from there, you can use your excess copper to create whatever. And again, you may be limited by the current technology level that you're at. So you may not have access to bronze at all right away. In which case, just stick to copper, ignore tin until you're ready to start getting into bronze. As an example, here's some iron. I need a new hammer, so I'll just do something like that, maybe a stick. Yeah, I memorized the recipe for a hammer, big surprise. But yeah, at some point, you're going to want a blacksmith. And the tools actually sell very well. What I like to do, though, I don't give these tools to my people, typically. I give them I have a bunch of stone and sticks being harvested. So I convert 15 or 20 axes at a time, and then just give them all of those axes, and they're usually good for quite a bit of time. I also need, I need 2 iron bars and some, I think I grabbed ore instead. Yeah, that's what happens when you're talking and not paying attention. So yeah, 2 iron bars and some sticks. And let's do that. But once you start crafting iron stuff, heck, I mean, again, this is like way past beginner level at this point. Even the copper tools sell for a decent bundle. So if you're fine using wooden tools for a while and just want to sell your copper tools, you can totally do that. The iron hammer that I just crafted has a price of $300. Let me just see real quick if I have any copper tools laying around in my warehouse, and I can sort of compare prices. Now, keep in mind their prices may be a little less because of, yeah, it's 300 here because of their durability. But the pickaxe, wow, 360. That's kind of weird. The bronze hammer. Okay, so here's a good example. Bronze hammer, 220 versus the iron hammer's 300. So obviously iron is just better than bronze. It has more durability too. But in the early onset of the game, bronze stuff will do you very well. Copper shovel even, 180. Which isn't bad, all things considered. Super easy. Just copper bars, make a shovel, bam, it's 180 minus whatever the tax or whatever it is at the merchant. So, long story short, start with copper, obviously. Craft that as much as you can. Don't go too heavy on the tin until you unlock copper. Bronze rather. And then once you've started getting everything that you can out of bronze, eventually you'll unlock the mine, and that's when you can actually start getting into the real end game tools. Villager management. This can be a pain, hard to figure out sometimes. It was a little overwhelming for me to understand how this all worked. It's not enough to assign someone to a job. If you go to the Management tab and click on the second button and scroll down to your various buildings, like let's take this fishing hut, for example. Right now, I double-clicked on the right. I have no one working on it, okay? But even if I did, it still wouldn't do anything. And you're like, well, wait a minute. You've got someone assigned there. You've got a knife and a fishing spear. Let's just assume I had one in the chest for them to use. Why aren't they doing anything? Well, don't forget to set assignments. Without assignments, villagers will sit there and twiddle their thumbs and do nothing. You want to click on the second tab over here and set percentages. How much do I want them to focus on fish meat? How much do I want to focus on dried fish meat and so on? And once you unlock the end game stuff like stalls, which just they're vendors, they automatically sell stuff for you so that you don't have to run to town. Here's an example, a food stall. I'm going to click on this second tab over, and you can see I've got percentages for various things. 7% right now focused on cheese. I have no cheese right now. I will soon at some point, but I can probably minimize how much I'm spending on that and maybe throw that into pottage because I've got a ton of that. So you get the idea. You have to set percentages in order for your villagers to be productive. It goes without saying that more often than not, as you're exploring the world and you find something cool as a beginner, you're going to want to bring everything back with you. And you're going to wish that you lightened your load before you left. So what I recommend doing, and this is probably a very obvious tip, but every time I go out and do something, I try to get my weight to around 10 to 15 kilograms. Now, I'm holding a lot of extra stuff right now, like fur, and the feathers don't weigh that much. Some clay that I don't really need to be holding, some extra meat, some sticks. But I would highly recommend this spear, for example. Empty out your inventory, keep some food. If you have a water skin, great. If not, you can just easily drink at a nearby stream. You don't need the water skin, really. Make sure that you bring at least an axe and a couple of throwing spears. In the beginning of the game, I like to carry 4 or 5 wooden spears with me to fend off attackers, or to, if I saw a deer, I'm like, let's see if I can kill it. Because one hit, unless you get a headshot, you're not going to take the thing down immediately. So I like to have 4 to 5 spears. I like to bring some cooked meat with me and an axe for chopping down wood. Everything else, like your building hammer, just leave that at home. You don't need it. If you're going to go out and harvest stuff, why are you bringing your building hammer with you? So again, a very obvious tip number 19 here. Go light. That way, if you do find something in the environment, you can bring more back with you. Last but not least, tip number 20. There is a map online that will help you find stuff in the environment, assuming that you want to be spoiled by it. mapgenie.io/Medieval Dynasty Maps World, or just Google Medieval Dynasty Interactive Map. If I remember, I'll put a link in the below description, but from here, you'll be able to filter stuff, you can click on stuff. These are like all user-submitted things. If you're looking for buried treasure and didn't know it existed, you can totally do that. And some of these things actually respawn. So these camps that you find in the environment, they're abandoned or whatnot, typically they will respawn their stuff and you can loot them again over a period of time. But if you're looking for a particular cave, or, hey, where can I find reeds? Is this a good place to set up my location? Because are there any reeds nearby? Oh yeah, look at that. Reeds here, maybe I'll set up shop here, which is exactly what I did. I set up shop right here. There's reeds nearby, there's water nearby, and the like. So super easy. Highly recommend this map. It's very helpful. There is one, I believe, that you can either purchase or download from Steam, but I find this to be miles ahead of what that is. So check out this particular interactive map if you're having trouble finding what you're looking for. And there you have it. 20 quick tips for the beginner player. Some of them were more mid to end game, admittedly, but hopefully they will help prepare you for what's to come. This is a very overwhelming game, a very grinding one. Like I said, if you don't like the grind, you can adjust the settings in your settings menu to increase the rate at which you earn Dynasty reputation points, XP, technology, so you don't have to sit there and craft a gazillion things just to advance in this game. But once you reach the end game, like I just recently built this tavern, I'm making wine and beer, and I'm making a crap ton of money just from that. So at this point, I've reached, I think, the end of the line with regards to what I can do. I've got a beekeeper that is making me honey so that I can craft, I think it's mead. Yeah, mead needs honeycomb. So I've got tons of stuff. I hope that the developers continue to add to this game. From the looks of it, from the based on their roadmap, it looks like they will. I can't wait until they introduce co-op. If I remember correctly, I read something about that they were going to look into getting co-op all set. Loads of fun to be had here with co-op. I can only imagine. A bonus tip. If you build a campfire and some benches, your villagers will use them, as you can see here. So if you just want a nice little homey feel, you can totally just build these little campfires all over the place, and people will sit and use them. So there you go. If you guys haven't already, subscribe to me on Twitch and YouTube. That way you can stay up to date with any new content I happen to publish. This is Vince. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you next time.